Good morning, Deirdre.
Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
I am great. Where do you think I am?
Well, those look like Western mountains. So I would think maybe Colorado or somewhere up in the Rockies, but you'll tell me exactly.
Yes, this is
Mhm.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming, the valley. So it's the hole, looking up at the Tetons, the Grand Tetons.
Now, remember that last week's weekly briefing actually went all over the place. It was about SpaceX, and there was just so much to talk about in relation to SpaceX that you and I actually felt that we had to revisit the topic this week. And some of the main points we were making last week had to do with use cases, alignment of motivations between businesses and tech companies, definitions of success, risk, and so forth. Lots of topics to cover. But let me jump right in and start with what I'll call the one idea to walk away with this week for the people who are listening. And that is that use cases proposed by tech companies and use cases that businesses want do not discuss the same thing. There are two trains of thoughts in use cases. Technology company use cases talk about uses of the technology. And that's all well and good, but that's not what businesses want. Businesses need to accomplish. They need to deliver results. They need to do their work and even reach out and do even bigger goals to grow, expand, build their marketplace, and so forth. And when leaders are setting those big goals, they may turn around and say, what technology can help me reach that goal? They're not focused on a technology itself. They're focused on achieving a goal so that what they want is a use case that will help them achieve their goal. Maybe using a technology, maybe using a different technology. And that's the difference in motivations. And that's one of the big problems with use cases these days. Tech companies are out there saying, well, you can use this technology for this or this for this. That's not of much use to businesses because businesses are dealing with a whole range of factors, not only meeting their goals, but they have to address risks and time and culture and workforce and processes and so forth. So all of those build underneath the use cases that business want. So let me stop at this point because I know that you feel that the whole SpaceX and Elon Musk story that we were talking about last week really makes this clear. So over to you.
Yeah, that distinction in use cases, Deirdre, is really important, and you and I were discussing that. We've talked about this a lot, but we've never really gotten this specific. But what there, if one were to just still look at it cold, as you were just saying, we would say that a lot of the advanced technology that we see today, the use cases are constrained by the technology. So we're not given use cases that say, well, if you're wanting to achieve a goal like that, here's how this technology can enable this piece or one piece of it. It will automate this one factor involved, or one thing like that. And I think it's instructive that so now to the point about Elon Musk. Why Elon Musk? Well, because it's current, and these are taking things that are currently in the news and seeing how we can learn as a leader to build a business. What can we learn from these things? The one thing that we can see that has been really clear to me in evaluating, or my point about evaluating is just again opinion of one. When I see what Elon Musk is doing, he is trying to accomplish a very large vision. And in that vision, you almost never hear him talk about a specific technology and the exploitation of that technology. It's about the accomplishment of a step to get to that. I've been able to land a rocket, right? I've been able to self-park a car. I've been able to let the car drive by itself. I've been able to reattach nerves in a human body for improvement of life for the individual patient. It's not getting into the technology. It doesn't talk about the technology. It talks about the bigger use case, right? Now we call it, it's a really ugly term. It's truly a vision. It's truly a vision. And when you and I talk about the achieving these things, we talk about a vision, a mission, and a strategy. And I think, and again, I haven't had the opportunity yet, and I'm going to use the term yet, to be able to exploit this or explore this with someone like Elon Musk. It doesn't have to be Elon Musk, just somebody that thinks like him, to understand better the way they think about these things. But you and I think about a vision being a very large accomplishment. It's constrained by opportunity. It's not constrained by technology. And if you look at someone like Elon Musk, they don't even let their vision be constrained by, can I do it? I mean, okay, I'm going to set up a human encampment on Mars. A human settlement is probably a better way to say it, on Mars. And then, as we talked about last week, we talked about how he, as any good planner does, reverse engineers from the objective to say, all right, what do I need to accomplish in a significant way to achieve steps leading to that very large goal, or in our language, it would be that very large vision, because we think we get caught up in these terms. Well, what's a goal? Is the goal that, or is the goal this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You and I think about a mission being a set of steps that you choose to accomplish that will lead you in the direction of your vision. And then the strategy is your approach to making those mission steps that you identify happen, right? It's your approach to doing that. And I think I'm curious to see, how far does the use of technology play? I think it plays in the strategy. I don't think it plays in the mission, and I don't think it plays in the vision. I think the opportunity plays there. I really do. And I don't think even, and then as you and I talk about, then you get into the question of value exchange and risk in trying to think that way through. So I want to stop here and let you take it from here. But I think this distinction that you started with, Deirdre, the difference between a technology constrained goal or a technology constrained use case versus an opportunity use case, is a big deal. And when people hear you or me talk about, we don't see the use cases yet, what you and I are talking about is we don't see enough people that are approaching the use of these advanced technologies the way an Elon Musk is approaching it. And I'm sure there are others. I imagine that we'd find that I'm not going to take a guess, but I'm guessing others like him that have similarly common visions, we might see approach it that way. But the distinction to me is, you rarely hear Elon Musk talk about the technology he's employing to yield those accomplishments. He talks about the accomplishments and then the vision. I'm going to stop and let you take it from here.
Okay. It truly irritates me when I read an
Oh, I'm
article.
sorry, Deirdre. I didn't mean to
No,
irritate you.
no,
You have a
not
smile on your face, so I didn't notice it was irritation.
no, Tom, you're not the one irritating me. The tech companies are. When some tech exec gets out there and says, I don't know why people aren't just jumping in and using Gen AI in their businesses. And then the question comes up to someone like me or to like you, and both of us have had significant executive experience. How are we supposed to use this thing, which is an incomplete technology, delivering incomplete results with no sense of how it would actually be used strategically in our business. And if you said that sort of thing, I get the sense to one of these tech executives, they'd look at you cross-eyed and assume that you just didn't know what was going on. But this is how business people think. It's a different way of thinking. And I'll make the point that the big tech companies made it in the business world when they thought like businesses, when they weren't just out there, oh, developing a cool operating system, or oh, messing around with the idea of finding things on the web, or this. They made it big because they had a business objective, a business goal, and they worked toward that goal and then could commercialize that. And you see this with Microsoft, with Google, with Apple, certainly, with Meta, and so forth, that they have goals that they work toward as when they're thinking as businesses. And this provides such a big contrast to how so many of these businesses, including the ones I've just named, are talking now about things like the advanced technologies, about generative AI or quantum computing, or even, heaven forbid, AGI. I think, and you and I have talked about this, that when technology companies in the marketplace are focusing so much on promoting, we're just this close to AGI, or we're going to achieve AGI next year, or so forth, they're just confusing the marketplace. That business people can, or the general public can't sort through exactly what they're doing anyway, how this would be applied, why they're even doing this sort of thing that could create problems for humanity, as opposed to developing the technologies that can be used for practical aims, whether it is serving as a booster rocket or self-driving a car or supporting a business goal or driving ML algorithms or things like that that have been proven to work. So this is when I talk about the misalignment of goals. I use the terms aspirational versus business goals, that business people have business goals. Well, the tech companies face the marketplace. That's the way I'll put it. Face the marketplace with aspirational goals, which makes it difficult to determine whether they even have any business goals that can be aligned with my business goals when all that I see them out there talking about are aspirational goals. I think this is something that maybe more tech companies have to think about. And this may be why actually some tech startups who understand this point may actually succeed more in the marketplace with some of these tools than some of the big companies who are spending all of these zillions of dollars just pursuing a goal that no one would ever have a use case to do to begin with. Um, so one of the things that you and I talk about a lot is risk. And maybe I'll bring this up now, that all business, remember, business leaders are held accountable by the public, by the business press, for the work they do, for the results they achieve or don't achieve. And when they listen to some technology company and start to mess around with the technology, their risk profile automatically rises unless that use of technology can be immediately connected with business goals, with business use cases, and thereby the risk can undergo the standard risk assessment and is contained. So business leaders, and I'm not sure again how many or how well tech companies understand this. The use of technology is very tightly combined with a risk assessment. And I've seen some people talk about, some consultants or people who want to, companies who implement technologies talk about, oh, well, this is just the conservatism of the CFO or things like that. No, it's meeting business requirements, frequently legal requirements for public companies to contain a level of risk in the work that they do so that certain results are delivered. And that needs to factor into all of these use cases, which leads me to a question which I'm going to throw back on you, which is, So how do we develop these use cases? How are we going to come up with the use cases that make sense for businesses and technology companies so both can work together? Over to you. Your thoughts.
You uh, articulated that you see uh, technology companies as having aspirational goals and the businesses as having business goals. I think, isn't that
Yes,
so? You and I talked about this a few times. So it's rare that you and I come up with something here that you and I haven't talked about. So that's why I know when I say, well, I know you agree with this. You just,
yeah,
um, but the point I like to is if you're having trouble with what Deirdre's trying to say, she's saying that tech companies have an aspiration for how you can use their technology to accomplish something by itself. By itself.
correct.
That's an aspirational goal. This one over here, a business goal, is opportunity driven. It's opportunity constrained. It's how you see the opportunity to do something. And we talked about that Collins word for this, Jim Collins word for this is BHAG, and then you and I might have BHAGs. Elon Musk has enormous, I mean, not just big,
Right,
hairy goals, but enormously hairy goals, right?
right.
He has EHAGs, I guess. Um, and or maybe it's a UHAG, right? Universe size, um, or planet size. So the question then we see that in and what frustrates us about this, and when you say you don't see the use cases, what you're saying is I'm looking over here. I'm looking at the way businesses would be thinking about their goals and objectives, their visions that are against the market, that are looking in the marketplace for hints of an opportunity that I believe I can exploit to great value. And that value may be um, in itself aspirational, right? It may be the betterment of humanity, or it may be a rate of return, right? So you have those extremes and everything in between. But it's then the question that you're looking, not the question, the point you're looking for is how does the technology company that has these aspirational goals, how do those aspirational goals fit into these kind of situations? So, you're in good company in this because, as I mentioned to you earlier, I saw where the CEO of Palantir came out and said that he thinks that we're on the tech company side, and I'm probably going to really get this wrong, and it's my interpretation of what he said, so I may be very wrong about this. But the way I infer my meaning to it is that we're wasting a lot of time trying to control the actual tech itself, meaning AI models, all the way through to AGI. We're wasting too much time. Instead of thinking about it the way that you and I are thinking about it, the way that we see in the way that we see what Elon Musk is doing, the way he's thinking about it, which is I use it and
Mm-hmm.
it's controlled within my use, and I'm controlling it how I use it. So I know he talks a lot about how out of control AI can lead to really bad things, but as you and I talk about, an out of control match can lead to really bad things, and it does really good things. It's how you use it and how you contain the use of it. And the CEO was making the same point that, look, we're wasting too much time trying to control the actual tech instead of employing it in a way that will keep it constrained
Mm-hmm.
and keep it doing good things instead of bad. And the one thing you and I talk about is look at the objective of Neuralink. I want to get into robotics or any of the other things, but look at Neuralink. You're attaching hundreds, and I think at this point it's thousands of nerve endings to a computer. And inside the human body and making connections that have been broken. That is the use of pretty heavy duty technology. My guess, all the way through the actual surgery technology and so forth. I think there's so much advanced technology, and that's why you heard me simplify it down to supercomputing.
Right.
I think he's employing all aspects of supercomputing, incredibly surgical robotics, all the way through data analytics, through all kinds of AI models. You just don't hear it talked about that way because it's not about what the AI can do for me or what robotics can do for me or what automation can do for me. It's about the actual accomplishment. It's the results. And this gets back to a point you and I are making. And I know we're now getting back to just like we were last week, we're going round in circles and all these things. But
Yeah.
but it's about how you think about the goals of the organization. Are the goals in the organization accomplishment driven, and are they driven based on a large enough vision?
Mhm.
Is that vision large enough? And is that vision a serious enough vision that you can then start saying to yourself, how can I employ smart things, people, technologies, thoughts, concepts, processes, infrastructures, capabilities? How can I employ all of that in a very smart way, a strategy to achieve a mission, which is the step or a first of many steps to a vision, a very large, in Jim Collins' language, a BHAG, right? So I think it's that lack of clarity in the thinking, Deirdre, that kind of bothers you and me because we see so much being done at a micro level instead of really employing this stuff in a way. And I'm not talking about employing the technology. I'm talking about thinking about the opportunities that exist in the marketplace and saying, how can these things help me in the strategy I'm employing to achieve the mission I've set to achieve the goal?
Mhm.
Over to you.
Absolutely. People talk a lot about how, for example, generative AI can be used in sales. Now, you and I both know that Gen AI is not ready for business use right now, but let's think about whether some of the proposed uses might actually encourage someone to adopt a Gen AI tool. People talk about it as an informed chatbot, which may work, may not work. But when you start to read about um, all of the programming, the questions, the data, all of that sort of stuff, you start to truly get a sense of limitations as well as possibilities. And this is where the whole concept of human machine partnership becomes so important. How much of what is this is going to have to be human and how much is going to have to be machine? And where is the balance there? It's not as if you can simply download a piece of software, plop it into your systems, and all of a sudden you've got a chatbot. Someone has to think through what questions, what answers, what's our tone, what's our culture, how do we convey this through through the chatbot, and all of these things are built into the strategy contained in the use of this thing. And that's the way I think that businesses need to start to hear more talk. Like how would you actually use this thing? I think everyone knows, oh, chatbots, but we've all had bad experiences with chatbots. So that's not a really good use case these days. Then people hear about, oh, in sales, well, Gen AI can maybe identify potential customers and so forth, but then, and qualify them, get them down the sales funnel and so forth. Maybe, but then there also has to be some sort of human judgment in there as well, because the sorting process depends on combinations of factors. And as yet, it may be available, but as yet I have not heard of any capability that would perform the identification, the sorting, and the qualification that humans can do who really know their marketplaces. A lot of the underlying programming is generic, it's not marketplace attuned. And that's the sort of thing that business leaders would be looking for. It's not just that, oh, I want a tool to play with, or I want something that may help do something. It's how does this fit into the processes? How does it fit into the flow? Where does it provide value in the flow here? And then does that make sense for my business? If there are interactions with potential customers, what are the failure points there? And there are significant failure points. I'm not just talking about the hallucination. I'm talking about understanding the motivations, understanding products and services, and how do you start to talk contract terms and things like that. So that there are severe limitations in this when you start to apply these tools to how business actually gets done. Now, there may be a part in there for some of these tools, but I think business leaders are looking for the articulation of the interactions between the tools when they are ready and the humans who, and then you combine the two to make this use working toward a goal of getting more customers or something like that. And I am not hearing, and you know, I spend a lot of time every day reading the business press, looking at examples and so forth. I'm just not hearing or seeing conversations down to that level. And I think what I'm really getting at is different levels of confidence between businesses and between the technology companies, that it was a no-brainer to use Excel. Excel was, or spreadsheets were actually the very first application going back many decades to get people onto their computers. It was a no-brainer to use word processing programs. It's a no-brainer to use some sort of content management or data analysis programs. Now, we've moved far enough along so that the capabilities are good enough so that we feel comfortable using those, although remember, humans are also necessary to take the output from data analytics and convert it into business uses. But now, do we have a level of confidence where we're even ready to listen to the conversation about how do we use this? How can this be used strategically beyond oh, you've got to use this or you're behind the times? Most business leaders don't think like that and don't have the full amount of confidence in that sort of talk that perhaps the tech companies would want. So this is, I think, what you and I, who have been dealing with technology use cases for what, 30 years now, Tom, or so,
No,
are
I'm not quite, I haven't quite dealt with it that long, Deirdre, but you know,
okay. You maybe 10 years, me 30 years, but
I
anyway,
did other things before that you didn't do
yeah.
because you were still in
Uh,
school.
so that, the more that you implement technologies from a business point of view, the more you understand the need for the underlying business use cases in making these technologies useful. There's a difference between implementing something and hearing about something. This actually gets back to a point I was making last week, and I'll mention this and then turn the floor back over to you, that I was wondering whether the NASA SpaceX work together would be a model for some sort of, I use the term private-public partnership because that's what it was in this case, but for some sort of partnership in there where someone who is using the capability can bring that capability as a use case, as a implemented use case that a business has confidence in, and then move on from there, the way that NASA clearly has confidence in what SpaceX is doing, even if it's not doing the work that, as far as I know, it may be, but it's, even not pursuing the capabilities that SpaceX brings. How does someone actually get down, a business leader get down to the level of how am I going to implement this? And the more advanced and unarticulated the technology in business terms, the more worry there is for on the part of business leaders about how I'm actually going to do this, and is there a model out there? And I think we were talking about, well, maybe if you bring a tech company in, they're not going to talk business. If you bring a consulting firm in, maybe they have their own solutions, maybe something can work, but I'd have to talk that through. So how would a business leader actually get to the point of making a decision to listen and see about use cases to implement here?
There are there are some models that have worked that are working. Again, I'm not close enough these days to really make a judgment uh, that go all the way from developing visionary technologies through developing a technology to solve a problem in government, and that's DARPA. And the history of DARPA is a very interesting subject. Um, and so there, it has been, and again, it's hard to make a judgment in a case like that. There's certainly been some incredible capabilities that have been developed by DARPA that many of us are still using today and are using today and probably will use in a long time in the future. But because we have no insight into the funding of DARPA
Yeah.
and those effects, so we have no idea whether how efficient that model is.
Right.
But we do know they've got some really good people and have for many, many, many years. Um, the one thing that you were talking about that was very interesting, and I want to now in the last a few minutes, 5 or so plus, that we've got to summarize here. To get back to, okay, so what can a leader of a business today take away from this? I think not to give up on the BHAG, or, I don't mean to use Jim Collins's phrase, but that vision that you and I talk about that is opportunity driven by the marketplace, with the concept of vision, mission, strategy, backing your way down, and then saying to yourself, what capabilities do I have, can get hold of, can develop that will help me achieve that mission or that appropriate step in the right direction to achieve that vision? Because that's about developing an important strategy, because we see strategy as an approach that you're taking to something. And so to develop strategies and various strategies with risk profiles and resource profiles and capability profiles, you would want to incorporate that. But that's not where it's a tech-driven BHAG, right? It's a tech-enabled BHAG, not tech-driven. And that's what I think bothers you and me. We see a bunch of use cases that are driven by the technology itself, and your appropriate term is an aspirational from the tech company's side, rather than being market driven, rather than being driven by a market demand or opportunity that you see or problem to solve in the marketplace, and exploited from that point of view. And anybody that's not familiar with the way you and I think, they hear us talk about vision, mission, strategy, and we can only imagine what someone would think when they've been told by their CEO to get a bunch of people together and come up with a mission of the company, right? We would just look at, what are you doing? So we think about the world in a slightly different way. It's just another way to think about it. But we think that it's the job of the CEO to define that vision, along with a lot of help, both inside and outside the company. It's the job of the CEO to define the mission, because it is driven on capability, risk, opportunity, value proposition, value exchange, and resources available and in your hand. And as we've always said, there's the risk profile involved in there and time. But only the CEO can make those judgments about various missions based on those things and the strategies that would achieve those strategy options. And then it's the job of the board to oversee those three things and be able to help make a judgment on what the company pursues. So we see the definition of those terms very differently, I think, than in some ways that they're used, but we find those helpful. to being clarifying, especially trying to build companies and build companies rapidly for growth. Um, I think that's one aspect. Just make sure you're clear as a CEO on vision, mission, strategy. And then to say to yourself, am I employing technology to an aspirational goal? Or am I employing it as a capability that I have at my beckon to achieve a strategy, to enable a strategy that will achieve a mission for me, that job of my organization that will lead me to that goal, market-driven goal. I think if you keep that clarity of mind there, I think that would be really helpful. And to make sure that you are exploiting the availability of all capabilities, not just technology capabilities, because you have to put that mix together. That's that secret sauce that you're creating that enables your strategy to be successful with the appropriate level of risk and appropriate level of time. And and one thing we haven't talked about, Deirdre, that I think we need to explore soon, and we've talked about this, is that part of the reason why we think that this sense that you and I have, and we see it in almost everybody we talk with, is the unease that we are all experiencing around the world, right, to various degrees, is not just driven by the obvious things, but one aspect is part of what this change from the industrial age to the digital age and to having us operate on this digital platform as a society, and especially in the developed world, and now becoming even more exploitive in the lesser developed worlds, is the aspect that with that has come this concept of learn by doing rather than learn by being taught, right? And that concept, you and I have a whole set of philosophies on that and how that is affecting people, and also how it drives this point you keep making about, as CEOs, we're being told to just use it. Mm-hmm. Well, of course we are, because we have now, when you get one of these, they don't give you a user manual.
Right.
And nor any of these devices we've got. They don't come with user manuals. But people are figuring out how to use them. Now, how are they figuring out? By doing. And that is a significant change. And it affects all parts of how we work, but it also makes it less comfortable for a great many people who are used to learning by being taught or teaching themselves rather than learn by do. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you to end our discussion and allow us to let everybody go back to what they were doing. That's hopefully more productive than what this has been.
I actually have 2 points here, and I'll make them very quickly.
I thought you only allowed one at the end, dear.
I've got two.
Okay.
But anyway, the first is, one of the things about the learning by doing is that it focuses people on the device and the software, that it doesn't allow people to think strategically about what they are doing. Maybe they can send messages more effectively or connect people or things like that. But those are device-based responses. They're not strategic responses. So the more that people are attuned to using technology in a do it to learn it mode, they're not thinking strategically, which is, of course, how C-suite people in business think. So we've got to remember that. And I think that a lot of the tech companies are staffed by people who think at the device level as opposed to the strategic level. But a final point I'm going to leave people with, not going to discuss it, I'm just going to set this up for our next week's filming, is come back to the term value, which you used earlier. In fact, next week we're going to be focusing on value exchange, which is an extraordinarily important thing. The concept of value seems to be lost in these competing goals, the aspirational goals versus the use case goals. And what I mean by that is technology company aspirational goals have nothing to do with the value created by a business. The fact that, oh, you can use this to do this may or may not relate to value that the business's customers perceive in the marketplace. Remember, a value proposition is perceived in the marketplace. And from that perception of value in the marketplace, you get the value exchange back. So it may be that unless a business leader can identify the value exchange, the technology company aspirational goals will not be of interest. And that's a topic we will deal with in length when we get to it next week. Another fascinating topic. Tom, there's just so much to say about these topics. We almost don't know what to say first about
No,
them.
it's great. It's
But
great.
anyway, next week we'll try again.
Sounds good. It's always a pleasure, David.
Yes, it is, Tom. So long.
Bye.